we can produce it. They do have a responsibility to help keep the air clean and things like that, but the regulations have gotten to the point where it's beginning to destroy jobs, destroying industries in this country, and I think the regulators need to be under the control of the Congress and not just running out rampant, making their own rules without proper oversight. And I think a lot of times they've gotten to the point where they even manage what light bulbs we have and what type of shower head we have. And it's gotten to where we are not being led by our government, but we're being governed and ruled by them. And I think this has to stop.
Thank you, Dr. Buckmaster. Mr. Hatchett, same question. If you'd like me to repeat it, I'd be happy to do so. Sure will. I'm going to summarize it a little bit differently this time, but same question. There are concerns that the EPA has proposed reductions in air quality levels that could hurt area and national industries. At the same time, we recognize the importance of air pollution as it relates to overall health. How do you feel about the air quality and specifically the EPA regulations that may hurt industries?
Well, right now, the present administration, President Obama, his environmental people have suggested 1,000 pounds, and it's not in stone yet, of CO2. And those of you who've got a paper here, you can see that this hydrogen plant that's running in Italy saves 17,000 tons of CO2 emissions compared to a coal plant. Now, the thing that we've got going for us in this area is we've got water. We've got lakes that are the best place in the United States for a hydrogen process. Now, the other thing is you can mix the hydrogen with a coal gasification plant and fall under the 1,000 pounds. But you can't burn straight coal. It's 1,700 pounds per megawatt, which is 700 pounds over. Also, the natural gas is 800 pounds, but it can be also made more efficient with hydrogen. So I think we got to go to the future. We're going to have to put hydrogen in the process. Now, your pre-existing plant still can burn the coal.
Thank you, Mr. Hatchett. Seeing no rebuttal here, I will move to the second question, which will be probably the easiest question that I read this evening, but may not be the easiest question to answer. The question is, are you pro-life or pro-choice? Mr. Hatchett, you'll respond first. Are you pro-life or pro-choice, and if you would, explain.
Well, right now, the Republicans want to save the fetus, but let's don't call it a fetus, let's say an unborn child. And the Democrats say, well, first of all, the Republicans say they don't want to feed it when it gets here, no wick. The Democrats say that they want, if you choose to have the baby, then we're going to feed it. I think in the 1st District, we have no choice with the churches and the people that are in the Bible Belt here to do both. I think we need to be pro-life, and when the child gets here, we'll feed it.
Thank you, Mr. Hatchett. Dr. Buckmaster, the same question.
I'm 100% pro-life. I have 8 children, so I'm definitely pro-life. And I believe that the Constitution protects us from the moment of conception to the moment of natural death. This is the biggest problem with Obamacare, is that it tends to want to rule us by committee and decide whether we have life or not. And it's not the government's job to decide whether we are to live or to die. We were given life by God. Our life is protected in the Constitution. And when we changed that is when we got off the track and our country began to deteriorate. So I am 100% pro-life, and I don't see any reason why the Democratic Party should stand against that. As far as in the past people talk about it, I have a bumper sticker here that says another pro-life Democrat. So there is a very strong feeling within the Western Kentucky people who are very conservative, and the Democrats are very pro-life in this part of the country.
Seeing no rebuttal, we'll move to the third question here. Dr. Buckmaster, we're going to stay with you. Mentioning the idea of life, just down the road here, about 10 miles to our south, is Fort Campbell, Kentucky. And we'd be remiss if we didn't recognize that there are several of those soldiers over the past decade or so that have sacrificed their life in defense of our freedom. This next question deals specifically with the defense system. What steps would you support, Dr. Buckmaster, to ensure that our country remains the premier defense power in the world?
Well, I think that we need to make sure that we support our troops and support the defense. That was one of those things that was lined out in the Constitution in order to protect the sovereignty of this country, and part of that is protecting our borders and also those people, anyone who chooses to to attack us, then we are to respond with equal and significant force. So I salute our armed forces. I have a son who's son-in-law's in the Air Force, and I think it's a crucial part of our country, and I'm very proud that we have the defense services that we have. They do a great job, and they've always been a source of pride from this country.
Thank you, Dr. Buckmaster. Mr. Hatchett, same question. What steps would you take to ensure that our defense remains the premier defense system in the world?
Well, I think as long as we're under attack, we have to respond. But my belief is that we don't need to continue as a policeman all over the world unless we're willing to make it our 51st state wherever we go. This going in and fighting a place and having the repercussions of the war and then rebuilding it, giving it back to them, and then watch it slowly erode. I think we need to have our heart over the bar, just like a trapeze artist. If we're going after them, let's go after them to win, and let's win the territory and control it.
Thank you, Mr. Hatchett. I'm going to do a continuation of that question here and give you both a chance to respond. We'll stay with you, Mr. Hatchett. I know that there are lots of discussions at the federal level about cuts to the defense system, specifically because of sequestration and the looming potential of sequestration. Would you support cuts to the defense system, and specifically as it deals with the troop drawdown and how that might impact Fort Campbell?
Well, those boys right now need to have whatever's available to them. It's my understanding some of the things that's probably more important is like helmets and armor on them, and than it is some of the missiles and things that we are spending the big money on. So, I'm not interested in cutting anything that hurts their safety. I think that they need to be protected, and if it means that we need more missiles, fine. But when you got enough bombs right now to destroy the world 200 times, it's kind of unusual to keep spending money on that when you need to put a good helmet on and a good body on.
Thank you, Mr. Hatchett. Dr. Buckmaster, same question? Sure will. When we're considering the issue like sequestration that's looming before Congress, which will require deep cuts into the Department of Defense and many other areas, would you support cuts to defense? And again, what will you do to make sure that our military remains strong?
Absolutely not. I think sequestration is almost a self-destructive suicide type of approach. We have Russia that's rearming. The Chinese are arming and spreading their influence throughout the Pacific, and this is not a time for us to back off. A strong defense is a message to the world that we are in the game and we're there to protect ourselves and our interests. And the military has already taken several cuts as it is, and that's the last thing we need to do is do any cuts whatsoever for them. I think that they're there to help protect us and keep us safe. And sequestration will lose something like 600,000 jobs. We have contracts that we already set up with the military contractors, and we're going to lose money that way through the lawsuits. But we're also going to lose 600,000 jobs in about 1 year. I don't think this economy can take another hit like that. And I think it's just foolish for us to disarm in this society and in this environment, in the global environment we live in right now. We have to stay strong in order to protect ourselves and keep others from attacking us.
Thank you, Dr. Buckmaster. And continuing on the idea of the military, we have another question here. But before I read it, and it's fairly lengthy in the explanation, I just want to point out for the audience's sake that Fort Campbell represents about a $4.5 billion impact on the region, and just over 30,000 soldiers are stationed at Fort Campbell. In Christian County alone, 30% of our population is either retiree, veteran, or active duty. And so as I ask this next question, I provide that for context. The U.S. Census Bureau every 10 years runs a census process that we're all familiar with. And in that census process, if a soldier is deployed, which we had 10,000 soldiers deployed from Fort Campbell in the year 2010, if they are deployed, they count towards what's called their home of record, which for many soldiers is where they initially enlisted. So that may be Alabama, Georgia, Texas, Alaska, Florida, or where have you. If they're deployed, they count towards their home of record, not towards their last known duty station, or in this instance, Fort Campbell. So the question is, there's a piece of legislation that's been filed that would change that process so that soldiers count where they actually were living prior to their deployment, not where their home of record is. Would you support this change in the process to ensure soldiers at Fort Campbell are counted toward the local population during their deployment? And Dr. Buckmaster, you'll be the first to respond to that question.
All right. Well, I was just trying to think about it as you were speaking, and I'm not familiar with this issue, but you know, I think that Fort Campbell is an important entity to Western Kentucky and to Hopkinsville, and the troops are here, the people are working here, retirees are here, businesses depend on them, and in order for us to have good roads and good schools in this area, that to lose that many citizens through some sort of a device of a pencil or some figure is wrong when you consider the lives it's going to affect. I would be in favor of the troops being counted as part of Fort Campbell in Western Kentucky, because this is where they're using a lot of services, and this is where we need our tax monies here to help support them. And so I would think that we would want to count them as members of this area.
Thank you, Dr. Buckmaster. Mr. Hatchett, same question.
Yes, I would, support that we count them here. Also, I got to work at Fort Campbell on the first Desert Storm. I built a runway with Rogers Group out there, and then the second runway, that was the one I think Bill Clinton came in, we had to expand it. And now I'm not sure it's asphalt anymore. I believe it's concrete, isn't it? So it's not Rogers Group does the runway. But it's been a lot of jobs. I mean, really, to be honest, you people here are not suffering like far Western Kentucky because you have the base. Okay, I'll stop.
Thank you, Mr. Hatchett. And continuing on the popular theme of cuts, in this it seems that we often will talk about what needs to be cut, what will be cut, what do you promise to cut. In your opinion, and we're staying with you, Mr. Hatchett, in your opinion, what department or where should spending cuts begin?
Well, I think we're going to have to tighten the belt, but I am more interested in us going forward with things. I know that's not the popular thing to do, but if we just keep withdrawing and cutting back and stopping, when there's opportunities like this hydrogen, I think is something that the president wants. If he is wanting green technology, he picked here. If we could get, Senator McConnell to do a trade-off, and we could save the atomic process there at Paducah and save those jobs and save the post office, then that would be great. But if it has to be cuts, I know there has to be, but let's also keep going forward. Let's push on forward rather than retreat and fall back.
Thank you, Mr. Hatchett. Dr. Buckmaster, same question. In your opinion, what department or where should spending cuts begin at the federal level?
Well, I think in order to secure a financial future for the United States and to shore up our Social Security deficit that we have, we're going to have to do some rather large cuts in Washington. I would say that we have to do significant cuts to the Department of Interior.